and girls. Well, hi guys, anyway. Um, Not much to report, really. Who's watching? That's Chirpy. Hey, so it is. You're up early. Crazy man. Don't know if there's a lot to report. It's kind of show and tell night. Um, a little bit of progress on this engraver this week. That's all I've done. Hey, JB, how are ya? It's... What have I done this week? Probably the whole one step forward, two steps backward thing mostly. Got these 2 feet, or these feet on here. Bit of a debacle with the counterbores. These are 1032, although they're not. I didn't have a 1032 counterbore, and I went and bought a metric set because that's all I could find. These are all right, and they cut okay. But the counterbores are way oversized for the bolts. Like this 5mm one's 5.6mm for the guide. And that's really not good enough. So not that impressed with them on that level, but they cut nice. 5.6 or 0.6 on a 0.5 on a 5mm hole is just a little bit sloppy for me. But anyway, there wasn't really enough clearance to use that, so I ended up doing them the hard way and setting them up in the 4-jaw chuck and boring them out. So I think we've got this reasonably good. We've started machining these letters. I made a jig which really isn't up to scratch. It's just not heavy enough. The idea was to set this up in the mill and run this 45-degree cutter past the end of it. That's the idea. But this isn't heavy enough, so I've actually made this one. Hey Cam. Hey Peter. Tommy gun machining, hey? Hey Lewis. Thanks, Cam. I'm at some point I guess I should make some decent ones, but counterbores are a bit of a cow. Anyway, this is the... Find some light here. It's a bit crap. This is number 2 jig. It's still sort of only any good, sort of. It looks good from the top. And there's a counterboard with that set, and they're pretty good. That's a nice solid base. I've just machined a step on here for the piece to sit up against nice and tight, and there's also a step here. So if we loosen the grub screw in there, this letter just sits up against the right angle in the back at the right depth. And I've just got a little bit of disposable copper to stop them denting up. And this will sit down in the vise nice and true. And this cutter should run past nicely and clean that up. And that's the idea. So we're ready to start in on earnest on them. There's a couple of jobs to use the mill for first, but there's 300, 400 letters to do. So I've got a decent jig and I'm pretty happy about that. Try not to look how straight the holes were drilled. That's a bit disappointed about that. It's too much work, not enough sleep, and some crappy work sometimes. It's been one of those weeks. So these letters go on here. And there's stops. I've still got to make some of these. I've only got one that fits. I'm not sure how really to make that, but it looks like it's been made in 2 pieces. I'm not sure. Maybe it hasn't, but I'd like to make some matching ones, so that's another project. And they just hold the letters in place. And we need to fix this pantograph. We need to mount a motor on it. It's starting to look like it might work. We need to clamp these letters in place. But this is slowly coming together. I did pick up this cutter. This is another show and tell thing. This is 3/4 radius concave cutter with inch bore. This is C-Tool in Sydney. Funny guy, Chinese, I believe. Everything comes wrapped up in dirty Chinese newspaper. I'm imagining a gentleman working out of his carport in a bluey singlet and shorts and thongs and a cigarette, and probably Asian. He buys at clearance sales and tool sales. You often buy, if you bid at an auction, you often find his name on the auction list where you're trying to bid. C-Tool is awesome. Sometimes you get things from him and sometimes you don't. I think everyone's had the experience that something's got lost in the post or fallen out of the bag or not been wrapped up well enough. He has a habit of putting things in white envelopes. You track him down because you can always find his fingerprints on everything. But brand new P&N cutter. Well, resharpen P&N cutter. It could be new. I don't know if it's actually been used or not. About $20. So that's been bought for a couple of jobs. One of them's to round this over nicely. That's the theory. Whether that'll actually happen or not, I'm not sure yet. But it'd be handy to have, and at the price, you wouldn't buy an end mill with that profile on it and expect to be able to afford it. So that's a good thing about having a horizontal mill. What else? Parcel come today, also with Chinese writing, and a fair bit of it. Don't know if I've done the right thing. I thought I was buying the same VFD that I have on the lathe. I wasn't. This one smells like plastic. It's probably better than the one I got on the lathe. Something I've noticed in the new generation of VFDs is that they actually have nowhere you can get your fingers on live wires, which is really good. So it can be just wall mounted. There's no actual, it's not like the fancy American ones that have got actual grommets here for conduits and stuff, but you can hook this up and not really expect to get your fingers in there. This clips out. Someone will know more than me. I'm deadly scared of electric, so I'm pretty careful about it and been bitten too many times. I know how to hook these ones up, but I need to hook this up for a reverse and speed control and stuff. And I'm probably going to put this way out of reach or under the bench. So hey, back to you, John. So that come today. It wasn't expensive. It was like $120 Australian. So that's the first part of the mill upgrade. It's the next project. I don't know what else there is really. The instruction manual for that one, Vico, I think is the brand name. The instruction manual is probably one of the best VFD instruction manuals I've ever seen. It actually looks like it's probably in English. Thank you for purchasing the Series AC drive. The Series AC drive is a general purpose high performance current vector control AC drive. The drawings in the manual are sometimes shown without covers or protective guards. The drawings in the manual are shown for description only and may not match the product you purchased. All rights reserved, copy or plagiarise is forbidden. That's the worst bit of English that I've seen on the whole book. Had a read through it. It's probably actually written in English. So I'm kind of thinking that might work. Now, I've ordered a couple of chucks. And I've ordered a motor for this, which should be here soon. But for the lathe, I've ordered a couple of chucks. This is an old Chinese bezel chuck. It's about 60, 70 millimeters. It's really crappy because the scroll's too coarse in it and you can't get it tight. Even with a couple of Tommy bars, there's only sort of this much action between the bar falling out and being tight. So there's no actual gearing in this particular chuck to make it grip anything. It's sort of any good. I don't know if I made any sense there. This has got a WW fitting on it for a little lathe, JB. And this is actually a spindle that I made years ago to fit my watchmaker's lathe. I'm going to do the same, but a bit bigger. With a spindle to fit the launch, which is quite a bit bigger. Oh, sorry, Chirpy. Kilowatt rating on that is 3 horsepower, I think. I've about doubled what I'm going to need. I'm really trying to do that. So what I want to do is fit a couple of Sherline chucks on these the same way as this one's fitted up for WW. And that's doable. It's absolutely doable. We've got some steel to do it and we'll see how we go with it. The Sherline chuck though is only 80 millimeters, which is only about that much bigger than this one. It's still bigger capacity than the one I've got on the lathe because I don't have a set of outside jaws for it. So this is going on to another owner at some point when I get there. It will happen. I've got this chuck, and Adam Carmichael and I were talking about this. WW, yeah, Drew, WW is Webster Whitcomb, which is a standard 8mm watchmaker's lathe fitting. WW lathes are usually D-bed and fairly heavy. Probably have one here somewhere. Have a WW? Hang on. This is a WW lathe. It's a pretty rough one. It needs a little bit of work. I've had this for many years. Don't use it at all now. I've got the Launch. But WW is 8mm collet size, and that's sort of a standard. There's 3 standards really. Probably there's four standards now, which is sort of a good thing. The watchmakers who make watch parts, antique watch restorers, things like that, that make staffs and balance and things with what's called turns, which are usually just a between centres lathe, something like this. I wasn't intending to get any of this stuff out, but here we go. This is a set of turns. This is probably a pretty good little lathe actually, and this mounts in the vise usually, and it's operated by hand bow or by a foot pedal, something you can start and stop and reverse instantly. So this is a nice little set of turns, and it's got, this is sort of the first standard. Next up is the 6mm lathe, which is used a lot, or used to be used a lot in factories and used a lot in repair shops. Nowadays, not so much, because you can't get bits from it, and everything you can get's expensive and worn out. Next is the WW, which is 8mm, and then next is the D or Derbyshire 10mm lathe, which is a bit more common. Sherlines come with Derbyshire collets usually, which is D. I see now lathes coming out with 3C collet systems, which to me is the sensible option. But if you go to buy a new watchmaker's lathe, quite often this is what you end up with, because it's cost effective and it's probably the best option for watch work. For collet work or for clock work, the best thing is a Launch or a Chauvelin 102, something like that, or a Chauvelin 70. Something that's a bit heavy with a bit of diameter and something that holds tolerances, which is what I've got. But this will be set up, and I'd like to do some videos about this at some point. This is a really nice Swiss made set of turns, and at some point this will get some use, but the WW probably never again. And there you go. Anyway, I've ordered a Sherline chuck. Adam and I were talking about this, to get back on topic. Adam and I were talking about this chuck. He's just picked up a, oh my gosh, a Cushman, something like that, from the Ark. Noah probably used it for retrofitting the new propellers. And it only has a set of outside jaws. A lot of these American chucks only come with outside jaws. This is a... Watch out, Drew. That's hey, Scott. That's... yeah, it's a slippery slope you can't get back out of, to be honest. Yeah, don't go there. This needs some bits making, so eventually that will happen. But we need some work holding for the launch first. I've got this chuck. It's a good old Pratt. It's a pretty decent bezel chuck. It's also works like this. Beautiful scroll in it. Nice and accurate. The reason I haven't set it up, I've got a back plate for it. Everything's sort of ready to go. But the reason I haven't set it up is that I don't have inside jaws for it. And these are a bit rattly. Probably there's plenty good enough though. What we were wondering, does anyone have an idea? If we were to chop these jaws off, and they are hard, I just had a look and they're, this sort of marks them. HRC 65. So they are pretty hard. But could you hard mill some grooves in them and make new soft jaws to go on the outside that you can reverse? That's a thought, because it's not much good as it is, really. It's a chuck that I would use a lot. It's sort of the size that I really am looking for. The Sherline ones I've ordered are somewhere in between these, between there and there. But if you could grind these, then you've got to drill and tap them. That's the problem. And they are pretty hard. So someone might know with a much better understanding of tool making than I do how to utilize that, because I tidied that up and put it on a back plate and use it a lot. So that's another thing that isn't going to happen anytime soon. But if anyone knows a good way to do that or can think about it, hand them to Bruce. Poor Bruce. Say, yeah, tap these M5. This is a bit interesting in that if we wind the jaws out, it's got a nice fine scroll in it and it's still in really nice condition. But the jaws only fit in one way. They're not reversible. Yeah, I've got a pantograph. I'm not going there. Stefan did a set. I imagine that he probably had more spare time than he's got at the moment. Just reading comments here. Yeah, maybe they would anneal. They're pretty hard. They really are. Yeah, it's not a bad chuck, and I've got one jaw in the wrong place, so I'm going to fix that later. But this one, it only has one set of jaws because this is how a decal chuck works. Decal bezel chuck works, if you've ever seen one of them. This is a Chinese copy, but the jaws work both ways. You can put them in that way around as well, and they work exactly the same. So maybe you could glue them on curly. Hey, David. Harold Hall has a good guide for making soft jaws. We will talk, Drew. We will talk. So I do have a new Sherline 3 jaw coming, which is probably the chuck I'm going to use most of all. So that's kind of what's happened this week. I guess everyone's seen these. This isn't new technology. I've never showed them in a video, but these are Japanese hardness tester files. They started HAO, Rockwell 40 to Rockwell 65. Pretty cool thing to have. Pretty useful. Sort of makes you think or understand that there are projects that you shouldn't start, which is where they're useful. No progress at all on the die filer. I am sorry, it hasn't happened. There hasn't been a lot of progress on this. I've fitted these up. I made a jig. I need to make a post on the back for a motor. I've got the motor sorted out. Need to sort out a belt as well. I've spun the spindle up. It seems to be fairly happy at 45,000 RPM. It doesn't seem to be noisy or rattly, so we're probably just going to use that as it is. So anyway, that's kind of a workshop update. That's what we've been up to. There's some cool things. Oh, okay. $80 is a really good price. I reckon mine were closer to 150. Thanks for getting up, Scott. Okay, Drew, too much stress on the e-drive controller. Okay. Yeah, I'm messing with a 3D print. Cam, these are excellent. If you haven't got a Rockwell tester or whatever else, they're really good. You can sort of see what grips a piece of steel and what doesn't, and give you some pretty good ideas of how hard something is. I really like these. I think these were about $150, something like that. You can get them cheaper, I think, sometimes. But obviously, you need to be spending 3/4 of your life on eBay like Marcus does, I think. Hey, Paul. Don't ask me how I am. I'm exhausted. Like, I've had enough. There hasn't been a lot of project videos, and I'm going to apologize for that on that note. No, you didn't, Chirpy. Didn't see that. There hasn't been a video really on this. I will when I get it going. I'll do a video on this. I'm actually working on some custom letters and things as well. Adam's been spending some time with me on that, and there'll be a video about that. I need to get this up and running though and out of the way, and I need to get the mill up and running and useful. So I see what I can do about that, Chirpy. I don't want to be an enabler, but we might have to. We'll see what we can do about that book. Now, I know you need another Visio. And you need another project. That's important. Retirement isn't going to happen. Not unless you'll get on and support my Patreon channel. And then it's not really retirement. It's pretty hard work keeping videos up to that and keeping videos up to this, even without real work. I do have a job, and it's a good job. At the moment, it's 50 hours a week in retail, so I'm not much good for anything else. I come home tonight and I thought, can I be bothered doing a live stream? And to be honest, when I walked in, I probably wasn't, but it was scheduled, so here we are, and I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I need sleep and vacation too, Chirpy. I really do. That's... Yeah, we'll see how that works. I want to do the logo that's on my sticker in a 3D print at double size, and I have been messing with it, and I'm not going to show you the copy that I've got at the moment because another few hours printing and some modifications and it'll be 10 times as good. But I want to put my sticker logo on one of these tiles so that I can engrave it on projects. So that's something that we're doing. Hey, on CNC, you're not really late. It gives you a chance to watch the video twice. Cam's making a slotting attachment. You should check that out. If I get a chance, I'm going to put a link down in the description. Awesome project. Cam, we would like some more videos on your drawing process and organization and file organization, that sort of thing. That would be awesome. No pressure, but that really was something that I found interesting about this build, is the colossal set of drawings that you've generated and how they all go together and how they fit together, and the labeling system and file system, and some thought processes through that. I really enjoyed that video. I'd like to see some more. No pressure. Only missing one thing, Chirpy. What's it missing? This is the motor I'm going to use. This is a Gravigraph high-speed motor. It does about 15,000 RPM on the tacho. It's got its built-in on-off switch. It's all wired up nice. It's got a proper cord on it. At some point, it's even been tagged. And this is going to fit up on here really nice. So that's what I'm going to use for that. It's probably a weekend's work to fit that up and get it going. But there's other little projects that I really need to get out of the way before I'm tempted to use it. So I'm trying to get some of them done. This is wobbly. It's really not good enough. There's so much backlash in this. So this needs adapting so that there's a taper on the bottom and a taper nut on it so that everything locks up nice and tight and you can still adjust it up and down. That's another project. We still need to make thumb screws for this to clamp this in place. It slides backwards and forwards nice. And it slides in under there, which is what the idea was. So we can get really close up here on our engraving, and we can get right out here as far as we need to. So theoretically we should be able to get probably 4 lines of engraving on that setting, and probably 6 or 8 lines of engraving on a different reduction. It's all theory. We'll see what happens, but this needs a screw in here to lock it in place. It needs some of these. We need to finish fixing the letters with the jig. It needs a knob on here. It needs the motor mounting up. It needs this fixing. It needs a pulley probably for the motor so that we can run a round belt. It needs a belt. It's a couple more weeks in it yet. We'll get there. Thanks for that, Paul. Appreciate that. A bazillion years ago. Yeah, we never had this sort of luxury. We probably had a crappy CNC router that no one knew how to use. But this is going to be a useful thing. Another project that may or may not happen here, and I've sort of thought about it. I'd love some feedback on it. These slide off. This is the centering vise for the plates or whatever. And we've got this nice awesome. Send us some pictures to include in project videos. I've got one more set to include. There's some line boring on a lathe. Send some more gear. Love to see what you're up to. Email it through. What I'd like to do is bore a hole in here to set a... Hear me out. To set a ER32 collet chuck in the table so that I can machine on the ends of things like punches and things like that on longer things that go through the table. Now, if I was to make or find a collet chuck with a nut on it and a taper in it that sat down in a hole nicely without any travel, we could use a clamping kit on here to lock it and take it out when we're not using it, and maybe even find a plug to put in here if we needed to. If we put a stepped hole, we could put a cast iron plug back in and maybe lock that with a couple of screws, something like that. But then I could machine, or I could engrave on the ends of long things like collets and punches, things like that, from either a 3D printed template or from the lettering that I've got. So this is all just pure supposition, but that might be a good idea. I know it's sacrilege to bore a hole in this table, but if we did a nice job of it, I think it'd be a very useful thing. So let me know what you think about that. It's a scary thing to do, and it's not going to happen just yet, but I think it'd be a really good thing to do. This is not particularly well made, and some adjustment in both of these might or might not be a good thing. This one's about the same amount of slop in it. If we have a look, we've got grooves there we made with this cutter in the horizontal mill. Look at the comments there. We'll talk about that, Adam, at some point. This needs a clean up still and finishing off. And probably some fine adjustment to make it slide nice. But I'm really pleased with that now. The other thing I could do is just find a chuck like this and mount it up in there or something like that. Maybe I could mount this chuck on there. But I'd like something that goes right through so I can sort of machine on the end of a collet or something like that. That's the idea. Anyway, I don't know if there's much more to share. The paper tape reader puncher. Goodness gracious. JB, you need to set that up and show us how to use it. That's what you need to do. I expect a full series of videos on this. That's what you need to do. Sorry, the opportunity's there. We expect you to be an expert. You said it. You said it. Anyway, thanks for the interaction and thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate a little bit of interaction here in the workshop. It's great having you around, and it's great seeing so many people who stand up and watch this. I do apologize for there not being any decent project videos yet, or at the moment. It will come about. There's things that I've got planned, and there's things that I am working on, and I'll have videos about them when they're done. But at the moment, I've got a couple of hours a night and no weekends, so I'm taking it pretty easy. Anyway, thanks. Be good, be kind to each other. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Check out all these guys that are on the live stream because they've all got cool